Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the After the Frame podcast. My name is Malik, and I am joined as always by.
Hi, my name is Matt.
And this week we are kind of doing something a little different. We're not going to be reviewing a movie. Instead, we decided to do something a little bit fun, and we went back and we took all of the movies of the MCU. Both of us have seen all of them, and we ranked them. And we're going to just go ahead and just say our ranking from worst to best in our opinion, and just see where we match up, how different we are, and just discuss like little tidbits of the MCU.
If you're a Marvel fan, hopefully these rankings will make sense to you, but some may not. And feel free to debate us.
Matt, let me ask you, how do you feel about the MCU, where it's going now? We've touched on it a little bit with the future of Doomsday in our Fantastic Four episode, but as a whole, since we're reviewing each movie and ranking it, do you think that the MCU is falling off like people say, or are you still you think that it's kind of still where it was back during the Endgame era?
Well, it's definitely not where it was, but it's comparing where the big pinnacle event in Endgame was, and the kind of sense of decline since then. It's definitely trending back up. It's nowhere near where it was, but I think they're getting themselves again. But as you'll probably hear in our rankings, some of the more recent stuff are not of the traditional caliber.
Right. I want to just say for my ranking, I had already explained this to you. My ranking that I'm doing for this video is literally based out of my out of theater enjoyment of the movie. Since we started doing this podcast, I kind of explained it in our first one, the Jurassic World one. We have our criterias that we look for when we rate the movies now. I was not going to sit down and watch all 37 of these movies again and then give my actual critic scores for it. Maybe I'll do that again one day and I'll put it up on Letterboxd if anybody's interested. But just for the interest of this movie, I remember seeing all of these movies. I remember how I felt. I remember the plots, the issues that I've had with all of them. And yeah, I ranked them literally based on not necessarily how good of a movie or cinema it was, you could say, but how much I enjoyed it. So I just wanted to give that caveat. So if some of the rankings are like, oh, but this movie is a way better movie than this one, I'm like, well, I just happen to enjoy that one a little bit more than the other. So I just want to give that caveat for my list as well. You have any caveats for yours, or yours just straight down the line ratings wise?
Mine are pretty much straight ratings, just kind of how I feel about the movie. I do have, I actually kind of went into detail. I do have a little bit of notes kind of on the side as to why, like kind of how to justify my rating. So I don't mind diving into those a little bit about, why a film is ranked where and things like that.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. We'll just go ahead and dive in. For each one of my entries, I mean, I'm not going to say too much about them or else we'll be here all day. But for my last place, I have Thor Love and Thunder. I have it there because that is the only time to this date that I left a movie theater and I was actually mad. I saw the trailer for this movie, Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher. Just getting Thor back, which I really enjoyed as like a character in the first 3 phases. Everybody enjoyed Ragnarok. It was a nice change of pace from Thor and Thor the Dark World. And this movie was just a complete circus. It was a clown show. And to me, it kind of almost spat on who the character of Thor is. He is just like a big joke. He's just like this idiot character, and wasted Christian Bale as like this great Thor villain from the comics. There was very little I liked about this movie. Some of the cinematography was good when they were on, I forget the name of that world where it was like black and white and everything. Some of that stuff was pretty cool. But as I said, I actually left the theater not feeling like good, like I was like mad. So I put this one in last.
Okay, so that brings a good point. What, just to kind of get a scale before I dive in, how many stars do you have it rated?
I don't know if I have rated it since I've been doing the star ratings. It would probably be like 1.5 or something.
Okay.
I really didn't like it. 1.5 or 2 stars, like a 4, like a 3.5, 4 out of 10, 4 out of 10. I wasn't too happy with it.
Okay, so that gives a good kind of scale, is because if that's the worst one on your list, just kind of, I wanted to see where we differ in terms of our worst rating.
But remember, the stars don't necessarily have anything to do with my ranking. I have certain things in this that I know for a fact I have stars. It's higher, but certain things below it, I just enjoyed more. Like I had more fun.
Okay.
So
that makes more sense. Okay.
So my stuff will jump around star rating wise.
Okay. Well, so diving into my last place, I have The Incredible Hulk.
Okay.
For me, just keeping my thoughts bottom line up front for all of these, this movie was released before Marvel really impressed, how much fun could be had with the MCU. And boy, oh boy, does it show. Like, even I wasn't of age to see it in theaters. When I watched it the first time, when I've seen it on television, when I've rewatched it's just like, eh. I gave it 2.5 stars.
Okay, 5 out of 10. That's fair. Since obviously we're gonna all be ranking the same movies, it's not gonna be like our list is gonna be completely different. When you mention something, I'll just give my tidbits on it since it's obviously gonna show up in my list at some point, so we don't have to, do the double talking at different points in the
That makes
video.
sense.
So yeah, for me, I have the Hulk. It's not gonna take too long for me to get to that in my ranking. Yeah, I agree with you. It's a fine entry. It was in the infancy of the MCU. Obviously, they had Ed Norton, which they ended up recasting as the Hulk. And me personally, I've never found the Hulk to be an interesting character. I never read any of the comics, but like they've had the Eric Bana Hulk, they've had Lou Ferrigno, they've had now Mark Ruffalo, they've had Ed Norton, and every movie that I've seen, even from like as a kid, I just don't find the character interesting. So I was just never going to really care for the movie. So I 100% understand why you'd put it in last. It's a very, doesn't take any chances, just very blah. So I get it. For my 30th entry, I got Eternals. So why I have Eternals here is because, once again, this movie objectively, I think is a good movie, or at least at the bare minimum, it's fine. I think that the reason why I put it so low is just because watching it, I was just so bored. I didn't care. Like, the movie had too much to juggle with so many. I think it was 10 in Eternals, eight of them. So many main characters it had to juggle and introduce to the MCU for the first time. This entry to me was just very devoid of any type of stakes within the grander universe, other than the whole thing that comes up in Captain America 4 with the, what is it called? Not the Eternal. What are they called? The Celestial. The Celestial popping up in the middle of the ocean. And yeah, I just felt like it was such an inconsequential movie. Many people have said like, oh, they should have used this as like a chance to use it for Disney Plus, make like a 20 episode season. That would have maybe made it better when you could flesh things out, but I just don't find any of these characters interesting. And it's the same thing. I walked out the theater and I was very like, couldn't, very meh, whatever. So yeah, 36 for me. Oh, and just to put, Hulk is 35 for me. So just so, since I already covered what I said in Hulk, just so we can knock those two out. So you can just give me your 36 and 35.
Okay. Well, hang on. Mine are numbered differently.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you my thoughts on Eternals and then dive into the next one. So Eternals, I liked this movie a decent amount when I first saw it, but I could sense the issues right off the bat. Like with most of these MCU movies, my stronger opinions form on the second watch, and the issues I had originally, struck out big time. This should have been a series on Disney Plus or something that allows the more complex storytelling to breathe. Do I think it is as bad as some say? No, but it feels like it is trying to be a good movie, and that results in a pretty rough end product. There's no time to really get to know the characters in between all the exposition and jumping around. It's a shame because there's a lot to offer with the Eternals in that universe. My next entry is Iron Man 3.
Okay.
The ending of this movie and the twist that precedes it are both movie ruining moods, and it has always left a sour taste in my mouth. It felt like they believed not much wrong could be done at this point, but they were in fact wrong.
It's the highest grossing Iron Man movie.
How?
I don't know. Money speaks, man.
How?
It cracked $1 billion on its own. It was, as you said, it's the time it came out. It was the first movie straight after the Avengers. Came out in 2013. Avengers came out 2012. So I think people were just riding on the Marvel high. But yeah, continue.
No, that was it. I mean, that tells you all I kind of have to say about it.
You didn't love the Mandarin in that one? You didn't like Aldrich Killian, that whole thing? Yeah, Iron Man 3 for me, again, like, it's so funny that you and I are very similar. We're just like a few things off. Iron Man 3 is 33rd on my list, so it's not too far. I'll just, same issues that you had. I think the only reason I have one entry that I'll get into that I just thought was a little bit more boring and blah, again, like kind of what you were saying with the Hulk. But at the very least, Iron Man 3, it was just like kind of stupid, smoshy fun. Got all the suits and everything. So at least I enjoyed that. I'm not like a huge Iron Man fan, so I wasn't as insulted by the whole Mandarin thing as like everybody else was, because I know obviously it would be the equivalent of them doing something so ridiculous with like the Joker in a Batman movie, then I'd raise hell. So I understand where people are coming from. It's just that I don't have that attachment to Iron Man for it to have landed so, made me so upset like it did everybody else. But yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. It was definitely not the best of the three Iron Man movies, I'll tell you that much. What did you got for your next entry? Since I already covered the Hulk, I already have three down, so you go ahead and do
Okay,
yours.
okay. My next one is Thor: The Dark World.
Okay, perfect. That's nice. That's my next one too.
Okay, sweet. This one is very similar into the vein of after the Avengers, because the Avengers perfectly sets up a fresh and new Thor and Loki. And this movie proceeds to rip every ounce of fun out of the characters and just shred it into a million pieces.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason why, so you have yours Iron Man 3 lower and then Thor 2 on top of that one, like just those two in that order.
Yeah,
mine
so
is literally
Hulk-
flipped.
Okay. Yeah,
So
Hulk,
I got
Hulk for me is the worst, then Iron Man 3, then Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah, so I have it as, for me, not the worst, but like just in the order of what you're talking about. I got Hulk at 35, then I got Thor 2, 34, and then 33 is Iron Man 3. Literally just because, as I said, I just had more fun in Iron Man 3. Whereas Thor 2, like, he was just like this broody character, and he's like, oh, I miss Jane and all that stuff. Meanwhile, it's almost like the people that wrote that movie forgot that he was just in New York and like the year before could have seen Jane then. It just, I don't know. It was like not the good parts of what I like about Thor. I thought that the first Thor movie was a very good handling of the character, but this one was like, as I said, objective. It's not like a bad movie. Like I wouldn't say, oh, it's a 2-star movie. It was like it had like all these issues. It was just like not fun. Like you're just watching this superhero movie that's supposed to be this fantastical universe that's, they're leading up to the Infinity Saga, and then it introduces the reality stone, but that's about all you get from watching it. Like a 2-hour movie, you get like this piece of lore that goes into the rest of the universe, and that's all you kind of get from it. Like none of the characters really progress all that much. So I had Thor 2 there, and then Iron Man 3 right after, and I already touched on those two.
Yeah, I think from my ranks, Thor: The Dark World is the worst Thor movie.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to it. I'm not a huge fan of Ragnarok as much as everybody is. There's going to be a few things where in my ranking, I know that they're very big fan favorites, and I think that they're just okay. Like Ragnarok was good, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So yeah, I've covered a few now. You've done 4 or 5 of yours already?
Technically 3, but I gave my thoughts on Eternals.
Okay. So I'll go next. The next thing I have, and this might be very contentious, I have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Yeah. I did not like this movie. I thought that James Gunn's initial Guardians of the Galaxy movie was such this breath of fresh air into the MCU, and he took these characters that people didn't know anything about. The second one to me leaned too much into the comedy, which is, you'll come to find in some of my rankings, I don't care for in superhero movies. I don't need my superhero movies to be like a circus, basically, kind of like what Thor 4 was. I think that Guardians 2 just dealt with the whole thing with Peter Quill and his dad. And yeah, like I didn't feel like it did much anything else. It just it turned like Drax into an idiot. And he just kept on making fun of like Mantis. I don't know. To me, it just didn't land for me very well. As I said, objectively, not a bad movie, but like it just wasn't for me. I just didn't enjoy it. I walked out and I was just like, yeah, it definitely disappointment compared to the first one, in my opinion. So yeah, I got that one's my next one.
See, this is a good one for us to differ on.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure yours is much higher. That's why I said it's very controversial. I have this very low.
Well, so here's a controversial opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think, thanks to Fleetwood Mac, this is the best soundtrack of the trilogy. While you made some good points, it's a movie hampered by humor that stops the story dead in its tracks a few times. This installment of the franchise has not really gotten the love it deserves. It's still the Guardians, it's still funny, it still sounds great, and it's still a good movie. Kurt Russell also deserves some praise for a perfect villain that caters to both the Guardians and MCU worlds.
Yeah. As I said, it wasn't my cup of tea. It's the same thing. Like, I really respect James Gunn, but it's like what I tell everybody. I like recently with my girlfriend just rewatched season 1 of Peacemaker. Season 2 is coming out in like a few weeks or 2 weeks or whatever. And I tell everybody, I thought the story of that was really good, but the comedy, it's like, it's to the point where you're like, oh my god, like vigilante, like that's how I felt about this movie, where I was like, Jesus, like it wasn't, I didn't laugh, like I didn't, it's just not my kind of humor. I think that Guardians 1 and 3 handle humor in a balance a lot better than this one, I think like it was too comedic, this one. So yeah, those are just my thoughts on Guardians 2. What do you got next in yours?
My next entry after Thor: The Dark World is The Marvels.
Okay. Okay. Mine is that's a little further up for me. Not too far, but remember, this is just on enjoyment. I didn't think it was a good movie, but it's enjoyment.
For me, it was utterly nonsensical to stuff so much new shit into a movie in under 2 hours. This was part of the movement where the MCU movies that were all shorter, and they all were worse off because of it. Everything happens at 100 miles an hour and stops you from really enjoying any of it. The trio is great together, but the pacing just hits you in the face like a fucking brick. So much you'll forget what you even watch.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, mine is not too far away. I just remember, so I rank this again. We watched this one together. I ranked this based on like just how I felt leaving the theater. Like, did I enjoy myself? Was I bored? What have you? This movie isn't a good movie. I wouldn't say it's good, but that post-credit scene got me probably the most excited that I have been in a post-credit scene for Marvel in a very long time. So yeah, just the lasting impression that I had in that movie was something good for the future of the MCU for once, which remind you that during this time, obviously this movie's like, I think they said categorically the biggest flop at the box office for Marvel. But yeah, I thought it was very silly. Obviously, I don't like Miss Marvel as a character. I find her to be very annoying. I don't know if that's going to upset anybody or if that's controversial, but that's just my opinion. What I did appreciate is that I actually liked Carol Danvers a lot better in this movie than in her first one. I felt they at least gave her a character, because the duration of her first one, she obviously was dealing with the whole memory loss thing, so she was kind of a blank slate. But yeah, I think just the whole team up thing just made things a lot more fun. They kind of were carrying on the foolishness of butchering Nick Fury's character. They didn't know how to handle him. In Secret Invasion, he's like this brooding, depressed guy. Then in this, he's like joking around with the cons. So, as I said, this is just that era of Marvel from like a year or two ago that they just didn't know what was going on. But at least, as I said, I had a fun time with it. So, funny enough, my next entry is Captain Marvel. Yeah, the first one. To me, why I have this one so low is because like after the dust settled and everybody, this one also cracked 1 billion. After the dust settled, and because it was put in between Endgame and Infinity War, everybody, obviously went out to see it and it got all this plaudits. But if you watch it as like a standalone thing, as I said, like your main character has this amnesia, doesn't know who she is. It's once again very like blah, whatever. The only thing I really liked is that you get to see like a flashback of like how Nick Fury was. It kind of in a fun way tied into how he got the Avengers Initiative going. And then obviously leads into her helping them in Endgame. So those are the only things I give it credits for. So like I didn't really care for the movie too much, and nor would I want to rewatch it. It's not like a classic or anything. I didn't have too much fun. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean my thoughts, I'm higher than you on Captain Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's perfectly average, especially by comic book movie standards. Brie Larson, to me, was really good in the lead role, but as per usual, a weak villain results in a pretty weak story. It doesn't do anything horrible, but it certainly doesn't reach for the stars.
No, definitely not. All right, what do you got next?
My next entry after the Marvels is Black Widow.
Wow, okay. That's a few entries away from me. Okay, go on.
To me, the movie was pretty bland, but most of all, it was a movie that was totally cut off at the knees by somehow being both a prequel and a fucking sequel at the same damn time. Like, knowing essentially everything before it makes the origin aspects pointless. And knowing what happens in the immediate aftermath of the movie forces the rest to take, zero risks or any unique angles.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. The only reason why I liked it, it's a very just fine movie. Again, like I wouldn't say it's bad. It's very average MCU film. And then, as you said, there's no stakes because you already know that Black Widow is going to pass away in Endgame. It's not like, like any big things are going to happen in this one. Only thing I gave it credit for is that it introduced Yelena and the Red Guardian in this in like a pretty cool way. Obviously, they're bigger players going into the MCU now, even till today. But I appreciated their characters in this film much more than, well, I still like Yelena, but I thought that in Thunderbolts, which we'll talk about, that Red Guardian is just like insufferable. I couldn't stand his character in that. He was a little bit too much for me. But in this one, I felt like he was still that bombastic character, but a little bit more toned down. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it. I agree. It's very, it's during the whole MCU critique that the villains are not very good. They had Dreykov, and then they butchered Taskmaster, which a lot of people obviously were upset about. So yeah, I understand these issues with it for sure. Here's a controversial one because I know a lot of people might have this very low. I got Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania on my next entry for the sole reason of just Jonathan Majors. I think that he just carried the movie. And before, at this point, as I said, hindsight of me ranking it would be different, but I'm going based off of literally what I thought when I walked out the theater. I was so excited to see what he had going on with Kang. It had like the post-credit scene of the Council of Kangs. You got the teaser of Loki season 2 with Victor Timely and everything. So it gave me so much promise of what was originally planned for this next phase in the MCU. And I really liked what he did in Loki, even with He Who Remains. I didn't love how he got defeated in this, or quote unquote put into another realm, whatever happened to him. And I also thought that the jokes in this didn't land, and I didn't love what they did with Cassie Lang and, MODOK and everything were very bad. It's not a good movie, but as I said, it's literally higher up on this just because of the gravitas of Jonathan Majors playing Kang. What were your thoughts on it?
Okay, I mean, we're not that far off.
Mhm.
For me, if I wasn't a Paul Rudd fan, I am not exactly sure what I would think about this movie. It's overly silly, a bit of a mess, which is a shame because the entire concept around the movie is pretty great, and the ending fails to save it from itself. It's not the worst MCU movie, but again, if I wasn't a Paul Rudd apologist, I might think differently.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah. What do you got next?
So above Black Widow, I have Eternals, which we already touched on.
Okay. What do you got next after that?
Above Eternals, I have Thor.
Okay. I have a little bit more to get to for that, but yeah, go on.
For Thor, I mean, look, I don't really like this movie. Now that we have that out of the way, there are many MCU movies where you watch the current products, then gasp when you see where we started with said story and characters. Nothing holds a candle to what Thor is now compared to what we got in 2011. If you rewatch it, his movie, his eyebrows alone are enough to make you question reality. Because he's got these big, bushy eyebrows, and it's just like, okay.
Yeah, they didn't know what they were doing with that. It was what they gave him like a wig, and then they couldn't decide whether they wanted to bleach his eyebrows because his hair color is different. That whole thing. Yeah, I have Thor a little bit further up. I love the introduction to Loki, who's obviously, arguably right now, depending on whatever they're gonna do with him in Doomsday, is probably the most powerful / important Marvel character that we still have going today with everything he had in his show. I thought that because from what I remember as like a kid watching, some Avengers cartoons and what have you, Thor and, Captain America are always my two favorites in the Avengers. And then this being his entry, I remember seeing on the end of Iron Man 2, the post-credit scene of his Thor's hammer. I was very excited to watch it. This movie, as I said, I don't even want to call it blah. It's just fine. Like, it was just like during that stage of the MCU where they're setting everything up for the next team up movie. So like these things aren't banger after banger or anything. But yeah, had a very good, compelling villain. The whole story of like, the brother rivalry. Yeah. And I thought like, they had a good casting for it. I think Chris Hemsworth to this day is a very good Thor casting when he's directed properly and not being told to do stand-up comedy in his movies. And then obviously, yeah, Tom Hiddleston as Loki is great. We got what's her name as Jane. She was serviceable. Natalie Portman. She's serviceable as Jane. And what's her name? Kat Dennings, like as the comedic relief and whatnot. And then, yeah, I thought it was just fine. So yeah, I understand why you don't like it. Makes sense. Like when you looking back at it. Next for me is the Marvels, which are already covered. And then I have a pretty recent entry now, Captain America: Brave New World for me here. This one, we didn't have the privilege of having a podcast when this one came out when we watched it. But Again, I thought that this movie got a lot more hate than it deserved. To me, it's a notch or two down from the first Captain America movie, whereas the first Captain America movie was just setting up Steve Rogers' story. It wasn't anything like this groundbreaking stuff. This one had a little bit more stuff to juggle because it's in a universe that's established. I think the reshoots are the things that kill it for me. There are some scenes that I think are almost to the point of like being like The Flash, where it's like, how did they even put this out on film? Towards the end when they reshot some of the things in the CGI. But the story itself is just serviceable and fine. You have this story of Captain America, and it's a little, they try and do the whole political thriller thing. They don't have the Red Hulk in there as much as people thought were advertised. But in the end, it's a solid, like just solid entry in the MCU that I had more fun with than I think other people did. So yeah, what do you think?
We're not too far off on it.
Okay, good.
For me, the movie was far from offensive, but far from great as well.
Mm-hmm.
Captain America Brave New World really wanted to be Winter Soldier, but it never has enough juice to reach those levels. And it's a shame because Anthony Mackie plays a great Sam Wilson Captain America, but the movie around him doesn't do much. There is some fun to be had, I will say that much, but this sadly feels more like a vehicle to tie up loose ends before a new, hopefully ballsier era of the MCU.
Yeah, I didn't love the exposition and the callback to the Hulk. Like, it was a lot of people were saying that where was Bruce Banner in this? This was basically an Incredible Hulk 2, which they're not too far off on. And then the post-credit scene was so just thrown in. They just had this movie kind of ground level, if you want to call it that, with the whole celestial thing. And then they just throw in the post-credit scene. Oh, yeah, and then there's also the multiverse. So, yeah, don't forget about that. We're involved. But yeah, as it wasn't offensive or anything, as I said, it was a solid like entry in. My next entry, I got Ant-Man and the Wasp, just the second one. Not really much to talk about. This one is just a fun but kind of forgettable movie. I don't really have a ton to say. Like, the villain, the Ghost, comes back obviously in Thunderbolts, but they don't do a ton of time of, really sitting with any one character in that movie. They kind of have Sonny Birch running around and they have the shrunken lab, and there was this whole scene where they're like running around with everything. And then the name of the movie switched from just Ant-Man to Ant-Man and the Wasp, and since then the Wasp has had little to nothing to do in her movies, which is a shame because from what I understand, she and him are one of the founding members of the Avengers, and I don't think with what everything's going on with Evangeline Lilly and Michael Douglas, we're going to be seeing them in the MCU again. But yeah, this one, once again, until we start getting to the better movies, I'm just going to continuously saying these were just fine. Like, this was also during the time, same as Captain Marvel, straight after Infinity War. The post-credit scene shows them getting dusted and everything, so gets people excited. And then he's stuck in the quantum realm. But yeah, not really much to say about that. Quite forgettable entry.
Yeah, I mean, for me, with Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think we need to come up with a term for when an MCU movie has a follow-up sequel that is enjoyable, but it also takes everything good from the previous movie and just makes it a smidge worse.
Okay, expand on that. What do you mean that like what did it make worse in your opinion from the first movie?
Well, it's been a bit since I've seen it, but so not to get too far ahead of myself, I don't have a giant gap between the first one and the second one.
Me neither.
But this week, with Ant-Man and the Wasp, we kind of get to that tier where I actually start to like the movie. And yeah, for me, there was just a slight drop off between 1 and 2.
Okay. All right. What do you have as your next entry then?
So I'm going to try and go speed run here for a little bit. So after Thor, I have Iron Man 2. I actually quite enjoyed this movie upon first watch, but it lost a lot of its charm as time has gone on. It's almost as if the pieces were assembled the wrong way, because Mickey Rourke and Sam Rockwell are both great in their roles, but ultimately it is a movie that doesn't land nearly enough punches to make up for the fake, and it feels like a setup movie for what was to come in the MCU.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, have it not, I mean, like, I'll let you continue your spiel, like, with your next stuff that you have. Iron Man 2 for me is not too far away from Ant-Man and the Wasp. People's big criticism at the time is that it had like too much stuff in it. It was like a little overstuffed with Whiplash, and then you had Sam Rockwell's character as Justin Hammer. To me, yeah, a movie can be overstuffed. I mean, look at what happened in the Superman movie that we just watched. It's very overstuffed, but it can be handled well. This one didn't necessarily handle it as well, and Yeah, I think it was just another all of these Iron Man movies that like the sequels that he had, the standalone stuff, I'm like all of them are almost the same where I'm like, ah, it's another Iron Man movie, it has something to do with a rival business person doesn't like him and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that this is definitely a solid entry in the Iron Man saga, if you want to call it, but definitely a step down from the first one.
And then above Iron Man 2, I have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Okay.
And then above that, I'll actually give my thoughts on it since this was right as we just started. I have Thor: Love and Thunder.
Okay.
For me, I actually don't really hate it. It's clearly too much in too many places, and it clearly overdoes a formula that worked with Ragnarok. But enough good things happened there for me to give it a passing grade by the slimmest of margins. But I am also not sure Taika Waititi took it too seriously.
Definitely not. Yeah, no. As I said, I just hated that movie. You could ask the people. I don't know if you watched it with me.
I
We
did.
watched it in a big group. Yeah, you remember after we were out eating, I think afterwards, and I just wasn't speaking. I was just pissed. Like I was really mad. And movies don't usually evoke that kind of emotion from me. Like usually like I'll be disappointed. Like this one actually like pissed me off. Like I was very mad. Like it has to go in last. Like that can't work. For me,
Above
oh yeah, you keep going. Yeah. Forgot that
So
you keep
this
going.
this this should catch us up a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Above Love and Thunder, I have Captain America: Brave New World. I have this one that we haven't touched on, and then the other two in front of it are quick and easy. Above Brave New World for me, I have Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Wow.
For
That's
me,
very high up for me.
really,
Okay.
okay.
I love that movie. I don't know why people hate it so much, but
For
we'll get to
me,
it. We'll get to it. Yeah.
For me, it was a pretty large step down from the Avengers, simply due to just being far too overstuffed. A lot of what plays out on screen works, but the inability to really focus on one thing for too long restricts it from ever really getting a good rhythm. It's still a load of fun, but it's just not up to the standards of the other Avengers movies.
No, yeah, I understand. My 2 cents, and I argue to the death with people about that when they don't like are there issues with this movie. Yeah, I hear the overstuffed argument. In my opinion, I think that it handles all of the different characters it introduces very well. The only thing that I didn't really care for is it kind of killed off Ultron a little too quickly and too easily. I think I would have preferred seeing him in the MCU a little bit more. I believe he's supposed to be coming back in this new Vision Quest show, is what
Mm-hmm.
the rumor is. But yeah, I mean, that's basically my only thing. I think that just Ultron as a whole, this was the period of time where like now things that were happening in previous movies are like the characters are building up into, what they want to, Tony Stark's whole thing is he wants to have a suit of armor around the world. And he was trying to do that in the third Iron Man movie. And like, it just makes him so paranoid, and it's just been his whole arc from the first Avengers when the attack on New York, and then he basically makes a robot version of himself who's like quippy and has these little sarcastic things, and I just thought Ultron was done really well. Another aspect I really like in these team up movies is because it's the sequel, we don't have to deal with the whole thing in the first one where they're putting the team together and they're fighting and bickering. This one is like they're already a team. They have established, the Hulk is needed in certain spots. Like they got Black Widow on the Hulk's thing. I really enjoyed that movie a lot more than I guess the majority of the public. Not more than the first one or any of the other Avengers movies. It's the worst of the four, but I
Yeah.
still rate it a lot higher than it seems most people do. I
Okay.
had a fun time with it. So
Fair
that's
enough.
my 2 cents.
Yeah, above Age of Ultron, I have Captain Marvel, which we touched on. I have
Mm-hmm.
ahead of that, I have Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then I can cover this one, and then we can throw it back to you.
Mm-hmm.
I have Captain America: The First Avenger.
Well, that's a coincidence. That's my next one anyway.
Oh, sweet. I thought it was a solid movie. It doesn't take too many risks, but it also doesn't overstep and make a mess out of itself. You've got a great lead character and an excellent villain, which are both enough to make this above average, even if it is on the lower end of that spectrum. I also can't help but wonder what this would be had Chris Evans really nailed this role back in 2011 when it came out, like he has today.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't really have a ton to say about this one. It's fine. Again, like it's just still in the stage for me of like the movies where it's just very okay. I never ended up seeing this one in theaters. And yeah, I saw it, I think, when it came out like on Xfinity on demand. I think I had ended up watching it for the first time. And I know I just needed to watch it before when they were announcing, oh, all these things are going to come up together in the Avengers. So I was like, oh, let me watch this Captain America movie so I see what's going on. Yeah, it's fine. Chris Evans, to me, like as you said, like as he grew into the role of Captain America and they gave him more interesting things to do and interesting plot points, yeah, he grew into it and became the Captain America that everybody knows and loves. This one is obviously just, it's a run of the mill origin story. Like you can't really say anything else other than that. So not bad, but not great. So yeah, that's why it was my next one. For me, we passed through a few that we already mentioned since my last one, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Above that, I have Thor 1. Above that, Black Widow. Above that, Iron Man 2, and then Captain America First Avenger. Then now I'm going to introduce the first Ant-Man movie is my next one. And this one, similar to Captain America 1, is just a very run of the mill origin story. I just thought it was a little bit more fun with the aspects of like the whole heist stuff that they had going on. And then Paul Rudd is just a more charismatic actor and character, in my opinion, than Captain America anyway. So yeah, I think it's honestly a little bit more underrated, even though I kind of have it ranked almost middle of the pack ish so far. I feel like when people talk about it, they either, well, don't talk about it or people forget about it. And yeah, I think it deserves more love. I think it's the best of the three Ant-Man movies, easily. Yeah, it introduces a lot of like cool things and then it leads right into Civil War. But yeah, Scott Lang being introduced, the Pym particles, everything like that, you know, showing a different side of this MCU around the same time when we were getting Doctor Strange and more mythical stuff. I just thought was a pretty cool entry. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Ant-Man.
Yeah, I mean, Ant-Man for me it was a fairly inoffensive movie when it comes to the comic book genre, which could be looked at as a bad thing, but there's enough charming moments to carry it for me. As I mentioned previously, I am a Paul Rudd apologist, which what is there to even apologize for? So
You're not wrong. Yeah.
take that into consideration, but man, he's the fucking best.
No, yeah, I think that them hiring him, I remember I knew nothing about Ant-Man. Like growing up, when this movie came out, I think 2015. I remember I was in high school at that time, and my friends were like, "Oh, let's go and watch Ant-Man." I was like, "What the fuck is Ant-Man?" They're like, "Oh, it's like a Marvel movie. It's like in the universe." And I was already a fan by this point. I was like, "Oh, I never heard of this like character." I was like, "Oh, maybe it'll be like how the Guardians were." I never knew about them. And yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, Ant-Man, like such a stupid power. Like I was like, oh, it's just like a B-Tech version of the Atom from DC, which is what I was accustomed to. And yeah, they have similarities, but like very different personality styles from the two universes. So yeah, I think Paul Rudd being in it was great. And I had obviously seen him in Anchorman and Role Models and all these other movies. So I was like, oh yeah, let's sign me up. What do you have?
So for me, after the first Avenger, I have Doctor Strange.
Okay, I'm not too far away.
For me, Doctor Strange was a very enjoyable movie, but also the perfect example of when people accuse the MCU of not doing anything different. It's well made, it looks great, and has creative concepts, but it never really crosses the line into anything that makes you go, wow, something in this range is certainly a solid movie. But with the source material, you'd wish they'd do more.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'll push back on the whole wow factor because I think at the point of this being made was 2016, if I remember correctly. I think that this was one of the more visually stunning movies, just with them going from the different dimensions and everything, all those scenes, and them just dealing with the mystic arts. I loved Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. I loved his relationship with the Ancient One. I think that this movie is probably one of the most underrated MCU movies, in my opinion. Caecilius is a solid villain. He's not like going to be one of the greats or anything, but his relationship with the Ancient One and everything like that, I think just made everything so interesting, like bringing you into this whole mystic arts world. So I don't have it too far away, but I really enjoyed this one. I remember you were saying in like a previous podcast that you like Multiverse of Madness, and you're saying, oh, I know you don't really like it, but yeah, I have Multiverse of Madness above Doctor Strange 1. So
okay, cool. I think that's a good transition because so ahead of Doctor Strange, I have Ant-Man, which we already covered. Right. And ahead of Ant-Man, I have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Okay, not too bad.
I kind of like it. Like, it seems popular to rag on it, which makes sense as it was released at a pretty bumpy time for the MCU. But I think this movie is going to age well. And I think it has aged well. It has a really unique feel compared to other releases in the genre with fun twists and expectation subverting moments. It's not without fault, but it's rather fun.
Yeah. I actually have it literally rated right above Doctor Strange in my ranking. There's a few that we haven't touched on yet that are below Doctor Strange and in between that and Ant-Man for me that I'll touch on after this. But yeah, Multiverse of Madness, I mean, it did its job. Like, Marvel knows what it's doing. It had the cameos. You had like a fun time. People's big thing was just like it didn't delve into the whole multiverse thing. They went into like one or two multiverses, and then the big changes at, oh, and you go on red and you stop at green. Oh, big deal. So people didn't really care for that, and I didn't either. But what I thought the film did do well is actually slow down and show Doctor Strange's whole regret and everything that he has with Christine, which I thought was like pretty fun and, you know, touched on from like the first movie. And then obviously they introduce America Chavez. I don't know where she's going to come back into the MCU, but at the end of this movie, obviously she's being taught the mystic arts and everything as well. And then, yeah, Wanda's a very good villain, obviously. And I still think it's very silly of her with these kids and whatnot that didn't exist. But, you know, to each their own. And Sam Raimi's back at the helm since, you know, Spider-Man 3 and showing like horror movie chops like his stuff in Evil Dead. Yeah, I thought it was a fun time. It has its flaws, but a fun movie anyway. More fun than the first.
Yeah, no, I agree.
For me, so this is where things get controversial now, I think. I have two recent entries here. Right above Ant-Man, I have Fantastic Four First Steps. For me, we already had a whole episode on this, so I'm not going to take too long on it. I thought this movie was good, and that's about it. I think that it's falling into a point of the MCU where I mentioned in our episode that I'm a little over it now. I think it's just been going on too long, and it's a shame because the Fantastic Four is this, you know, this great team, this great family, has this lineage in Marvel. But I felt like after walking out of this one, it sets up something for Doomsday in the post-credit scene, and that's about it within the movie itself. It has a fun world that's already lived in, has cool visuals, but I just felt like it's just yet another entry in the MCU, and that's all it is. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Fantastic Four. You have any other things you want to touch on?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'll kind of just restate the same thoughts I gave when we did our podcast. And if you haven't listened to that, go check it out. But, you know, with this film, never has the term good, not great, you know, stung so much for me walking out of a movie.
I think you mean good, not fantastic.
Get out.
Actually what I think you meant to say. Yeah.
There is a ton to love with the first successful Fantastic Four movie, and that's the good news. But there is a very clear lack of realized potential with the finished product. You know, the characters are fun, thanks to great casting. The aesthetic of the environment is great, and the score and theme song is elite. But unfortunately, it flies by too fast without any time to really breathe. You know, why not give us more time to emotionally connect with the heroes or the villains? And aside from some wonky CGI at times, the biggest issue with this movie was sadly one in Marvel's control. They didn't give it a chance to be great.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on your head, and it's already up there on our channel, and we've already talked about it at length for over an hour. So if you want to like find out more thoughts on it, you can go and watch that. Next up, right above that, again, another recent thing, I have Thunderbolts right above it. As I said, I know this is controversial because everybody's acting like Thunderbolts is God's gift to the MCU right now, just because, you know, it's been a while since they've had a banger. You have Thunderbolts above Fantastic Four? Yes. So I have Fantastic Four star-wise above Thunderbolts.
Okay.
But enjoyment,
okay,
I had more fun watching Thunderbolts. I think the Thunderbolts, again, like we didn't have this podcast when that movie came out, but Thunderbolts like balances this whole depression thing very well with the Void, and then obviously all the characters in the team. I think it might be a little overrated. I really do enjoy the movie, but I don't think it's like to the caliber of some of these great movies that we'll get into. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I love a good team up movie. I thought that Red Guardian was just so annoying in it, just me personally. And then they kill off Taskmaster. They barely give Ghost anything to do. It's basically just kind of you remember the Harley Quinn movie where it was called Harley Quinn and the Fantabulous, all that stuff. I feel like it's kind of just Yelena and the Fantabulous, like it's just her movie, and then everybody else is kind of along for the ride. You see everything through her eyes and through Bob's eyes, and they kind of rush through Bob being Sentry, and then he zooms into being the Void. And then you got, you know, Valentina pulling the strings in the background. I feel like this movie was good. As I said, it was definitely a step in the right direction for what Marvel has had. but definitely has its faults. And I just don't see how this team is going to stack up against Doctor Doom. I anticipate that most of them will be dead come the next Avengers movie.
Yeah, I mean, for me with Thunderbolts, on one hand, this was a return to form for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but on the other hand, this was a journey into a territory that also felt fresh and new. Thunderbolts balances out the charm and fun of the MCU, but also manages to explore some pretty heavy themes that tie perfectly into the story. There are many familiar beats, but the look of the movie stuck out in a good way, especially the stylistic choices surrounding the main antagonist. It's been a rough patch for the comic book studio, but this has hit the mark in many ways. And it's also worth noting to me that it is one of the best balancing of comedy Marvel has had maybe ever. I mean, it's packed with a slew of serious moments and scenes, but they avoided undercutting the emotion with a joke and picked their spots perfectly to garner a laugh.
Yeah, cut to Red Guardian yelling about something in the next scene. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, for the most part, yeah, I agree with that. What did you have next up on your list? After that, we already touched on mine. Above Thunderbolts, I have Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness right above those.
Okay, so after Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I have Deadpool and Wolverine.
Okay, I'm not too far off again.
As with most Marvel movies in recent memory, much of Deadpool and Wolverine is enjoyed dependent on your commitment to the franchise. But
Mm-hmm.
what is good with this movie, truly excels, and it turns into a great experience. It's hard to find chemistry as perfect as Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman's, especially in their first real go around with the characters together.
Yeah, I mean, this movie to me, I have it 2 notches up from where we last left off. I thought that this movie handled the multiverse and all of the cameos very well, and then actually had them there using plot points. They use, Loki's introduction of the void. They introduce things of the anchor beings, and what I really appreciated about it the most is that it's basically like a love letter to the Fox movies, and like gave it a nice little send off, as that's like the last time we're going to be seeing these Fox movies standing alone, and now they'll be all introduced come Doomsday. All of them will be coming over. So yeah, I thought that like the cameo for Chris Evans being a Human Torch, I thought like it was just fun cameos, but not feeling like they were shoehorned into the plot. They were there for good reason. My only gripe with the movie, not my only gripe, but one of the big gripes I had with the movie was the villain. I felt like Cassandra Nova was too overpowered of a villain for our heroes at some points, and also too overpowered to the point where she literally just waltzed out of the void at a moment's notice. So why was she there in the first place? Stuff like that. Whenever you deal with multiverse stuff, you're going to have like these questions that I don't think Marvel will always be able to answer, but I refuse as a viewer to just shut my brain off and just let them get away with it. But yeah, a fun time. I love the interaction between Deadpool and Wolverine. I think that obviously Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman have great on-screen chemistry. Yeah, I don't have really any other thoughts on that. It was just like a fun time. I'm getting into from here on out is all movies that I like / love. I think that they all are quite good going forward for me.
So on that topic of Deadpool, you and I chatted before we started recording, but so I actually have the Deadpool movies also combined within my rankings. And if you want to give quick little tidbits, feel free.
Mm-hmm.
But so just in front of Deadpool and Wolverine, I have Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2 to me was very similar to what took place with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as a follow-up. It has a really good villain from a great actor, a solid sequel with a fun story, but dropped down a hair by humor that doesn't click quite as much as its predecessor.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you do your Deadpool and Deadpool 2 stuff. Like, I don't really have much to say on those since I don't have them ranked in this. The only thing I'll say is I enjoyed Deadpool and Wolverine more than the other two, personally.
Fair enough. And then in front of Deadpool 2, I have Thunderbolts, and then ahead of Thunderbolts, I have Fantastic Four First Steps, and then next up on the list, I have Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Okay, I'm coming up on that too. We're kind of in the same ballpark.
For me, this movie is so close to being up there with the elite Marvel releases, if not for falling into the trap of cliched third act traps that plagues the MCU.
Right.
With that said, it's a fresh feel compared to those around it, with brand new styles, fighting, and intriguing lore. It would be a mistake to not feature Shang-Chi far more going forward in the MCU.
Yeah, my three gripes with this, it's not even the movie as a whole necessarily for some of these gripes, but we should have seen Shang-Chi again by now. Upsets me that we haven't had at least a sequel or a cameo or something. But why this movie is a little bit lower than some of the other ones, I really did love this movie. Like, I thought it was so. Once again, another character introduced that I know nothing about. This martial arts style was so beautifully done. The casting was great, bar one person. My gripe in this movie is Aquafina, as everything that she's in, I just can't stand her in. And then, yeah, at the end, I felt like they were leaning too much into the huge CGI third act that Marvel tends to have when this movie was so well grounded. Obviously, you had the Ten Rings, but you had this whole family type drama thing. You had the actual Mandarin, not the one from Iron Man 3, coming in here, and he was obviously mourning his wife's passing and was being manipulated by this thing. And then you have this complicated family dynamic between him and his children. I just thought like it was, yeah, a great film. This is one of the films that I was pitching that I think what they did in Fantastic Four, this movie should have been on a different Earth, and that would have explained more why he's not around. And it would explain the whole Mandarin foolishness that happened in Iron Man 3, that this is the actual Mandarin and he's in a different universe and they don't have an Iron Man or something. But yeah, that was just my pitch. Obviously, this was done well before Fantastic Four first steps and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I agree. Very good movie. I quite liked it. My next thing that we just skipped over, so we had Multiverse of Madness. I've got Thor Ragnarok right above Multiverse of Madness. And then above that, I got Deadpool and Wolverine. So Ragnarok for me, I kind of already touched on it when we talked about the other Thor stuff. I liked it a lot. It was very drastically different from the tones of Thor 1 and Thor 2. Obviously, the comedy is much more well balanced in this than in Thor 4. My gripe with this movie is literally the Hulk. They made the Hulk so childish and a big baby just for laughs. And I think that the MCU really disrespects the Hulk as a whole. And I've never met anybody that their Hulk is their favorite superhero, but I'm sure if you were to ask them, they would not like his handling in this universe. But yeah, that's basically my only gripe with the movie. I thought it shows more of Chris Hemsworth's charisma, what he can actually do as a leading man, not being so brooding and being so serious like he was in the other two. And yeah, it handled his humor a lot better. Introduced Valkyrie. You got Loki in there again. Introduces Korg, Meek, all of that, and then it leads right into, of course, Infinity War. So yeah, what do you have about that one?
I knew you said earlier on that you were gonna have it low, but it just hurt to hear that.
What do you have it? What, in the top 5 or something?
I have it at 6.
My word.
For me,
doesn't work for me.
For me, Thor Ragnarok is cinematic proof that the phrase "can't polish a turd" is not true. Taika Waititi in this film found a way to take a dying franchise with a character loved in team-up movies and inject, loud, energetic, and colorful life into it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, as I said, like he balanced it very well in this one, and then the next one, a little carried away. You already covered Shang-Chi. I have that right above Deadpool and Wolverine. My next one we haven't talked about is Black Panther Wakanda Forever is my next one. This one, I really enjoyed. The movie itself is very somber, obviously, and deals with a lot of death, not only what happened with Chadwick Boseman in real life, but then also within the film of Queen Ramonda dying as well. I'm sure he's kind of left having to deal with the ramifications of everything that's going on. It introduces Namor, famous from the Marvel comics. He's not messing around at all with his Talokan people and everything dealing with vibranium. It introduces Ironheart, whose show I didn't really care for, and she, is just in this movie just to be in the movie. But, it has a lot of things like from the first Black Panther that we still enjoy. You got M'Baku, you got Okoye, you got Nakia, you got all these characters back. Where I give it so much credit is that obviously this movie was going to be so different, and then Chadwick Boseman tragically passed, and for what they had to do pivoting, I think they did it really well. The movie might have just been a little bit too much overstuffed and like too many things were being introduced a bit, which slowed it down in some aspects of it, which kind of dampened my enjoyment of it. But overall, just with the cards they were dealt, I think that Ryan Coogler did like a very good job with what he could.
Yeah, I mean, for me, much like its predecessor, it's a movie that feels elevated above much of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was obviously impacted by a real-world tragic reason, but The story here is fairly compelling and emotional without feeling cheap or over the top. And yeah, Angela Bassett's monologues and scenes alone put this towards the top of the franchise.
No, yeah, and I think that she got hard done by the Oscars. I think she deserved it over Jamie Lee Curtis that year, but that's a discussion for another day. All right, what do you got next?
What did Jamie Lee Curtis win for? Do you remember?
Everything Everywhere All at Once. And she was easily like the daughter. What's the daughter's name in that movie? She would have deserved Best Supporting Actress much more than Jamie Lee Curtis,
Hmm.
and then still somehow Jamie Lee Curtis won. But I love Jamie Lee Curtis. Just she wasn't the best that year, in that, especially not even in that movie.
Okay. For me, so above Shang-Chi, I actually put this on here and I was wondering, like, does this count? Like, am I allowed to rank this with Marvel Cinematic Universe movies? And I mean, I am because it's fucking awesome. It's Werewolf by Night. It's simple but effective, and it's more proof that Disney Plus Marvel releases should probably lean more into this style than the long series that drag out stories we could consume in much tighter, snappier ways. So I know it's a short film, but I highly, highly recommend it.
Film nonetheless. No, I don't have it in my ranking, so I don't really have anything to say on that one.
Fair enough.
But what's your next one that you have above that?
Above that, I have this one might be a hot take. I have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is not to say that, because to me, 2 and 3 are very, very similar, and I can touch on that in just a moment. For me, Volume 3 is a love letter to a great franchise coming to a close, and never once did James Gunn lose sight of what made us fall in love with this wacky band of misfits.
Yeah, I mean, I have Guardian. Well, spoiler alert: my Guardians 3 is my favorite of the three. Controversially, I know that everybody acts like the first one is like but yeah, Guardians 3 for me. I think that it shifting the focus from Star-Lord to Rocket was so great. I loved seeing his backstory, his tragic backstory, and what we come to see with the Guardians is that they're so lighthearted and this ragtag group, makeshift family, but they all come from like these kind of like low places in their lives at first, kind of what Thunderbolts were basically doing. And yeah, we finally get to see Rocket's backstory. The High Evolutionary in this movie is so twisted and so sociopathic and does not care about life at all, and played as a very good antagonist in this and trying to basically control Rocket and actually created Rocket and everything. To me, it hit the emotional beats the most out of all the three. So again, this is me ranking based off of how I felt in the theater and how I left. Yeah, the Guardians ending up going their separate ways. We got Gamora, who's from another universe. I love that he didn't shoehorn them to forcing a love back. And yeah, they go their separate ways. She's off with the Ravagers. He goes to Earth. Then you got Mantis going her way. Drax, goes his way. And then it leaves Rocket to kind of have this new Guardians team. We don't know what's going to happen with them and going forward in the MCU, but yeah, I thought that it was such a touching way to end this great trilogy that James Gunn brought into the MCU and introduced, these no-name D-list, C-list characters from the comics that are now household names. Like everybody knows Groot, everybody knows Gamora now, so you have to tip your hat to that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And for clarification, like it's not far at all from me. Just in front of Volume 3, I have Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which we just touched on.
Mm-hmm.
And then ahead of that is Guardians Volume 2.
Okay, got you. All right, well, for me next, this is a Spider-Man Far From Home. This is, a lot of people didn't seem to like this movie. I thought that it's just similar to what I was saying with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. The villain for me in this movie is what makes the movie. I thought that Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio played this so well. Obviously, knowing him from the comics, you knew that he was not going to be this good guy that he purported to be in the beginning. Wasn't this great turn or anything, like as if like it was going to be a shock. But the implementation from the comics to what they switched it to in the movie of him using the drones and kind of tying it into Tony Stark, and he's the one that created the barf tech that Tony Stark implemented in Civil War, I thought was just like a really cool, callback. And yeah, using the drones and using that as his illusions to try and basically, hoist himself up as the superhero. to be this antagonist for Peter Parker while he's just trying to be on vacation and he's sorting out, he's a teenager, man. He's trying to sort out his thing with MJ. And I just thought it was like a fun thing where he's trying to deal with being a kid and have his life outside of being Spider-Man. And he's on this vacation with his school. And then Mysterio's here just like screwing him up while he's, trying to live his normal life. So I really like this movie. I thought it was a ton of fun. And then some of the visuals on, especially the fight scene that they have in before he gets hit by the train, I thought was like outstanding.
Yeah, no, I agree. This, with the Spider-Man MCU franchise, this entire franchise is excellent. And the villains are a big reason why. I can't think of a better role for Jake Gyllenhaal to stick his undeniable charm onto. I mean, Mysterio is a fantastic, fun villain, and I hope we see more of him eventually. But you also see Peter at some of his lowest moments, and it gives a different feel from Homecoming, despite not losing the same charm and humor.
Yeah. What do you have next up on your list?
So, just above Guardians Volume 2, I have Captain America Civil War. Uh-oh. For me, I thought Captain America Civil War at times was a movie that buckles under the weight of what was, at the time, the biggest comic book team-up movie. Civil War manages to still carry the emotional punch of Winter Soldier and give us one of the better MCU installments.
Yeah. For me, I have this very like high, way higher up in my list, so we'll revisit it again when I get to it. But yeah, for me, it's one of the movies in the MCU that when I just like want something to watch, I put on again and again. Like, it's just such a cool movie. It introduces Spider-Man into the MCU. Obviously, everybody's big thing during that time was, are you Team Cap? Are you Team Iron Man? It was like a whole event. And then we already had a lot of these established heroes. It just introduces basically Spider-Man and Black Panther in this. Everybody else we already know, so it doesn't spend a ton of time having to, introduce backstories on this person, why they feel the way that they do. Iron Man and Captain America having this different ideology makes sense to their characters that they set up. And then I love Zemo in the background. That's the real villain pulling the strings, turning the Avengers against each other. And why I think it's such an important film is that the ramifications that we see in this movie are basically why the Avengers lose in Infinity War. They're not united. And so I think it's also just an important film for the universe as a whole.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
Yeah, for me next, I have, this is controversial. I just have Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one. Yeah, this one is not, it's not one of the ones that I revisit a ton. I watched it in theaters and I was blown away at how much I actually cared about these characters that I didn't know about. And I thought that they were all really fun. Other than that, that's all I have to say. It was just fun. I don't think that the substance necessarily was all that much there. I think that those come within the sequels as we learn more about the Guardians. Obviously, it's a Peter Quill heavy movie. We deal with, opens up with his mom and everything like that. And then we find out more about his dad in the sequels. But yeah, it shows a little bit of Thanos. It has like a pretty forgettable villain in Ronan the Accuser. It introduces the Power Stone as well. Even James Gunn has come out and said that he created the whole lore of the Infinity Stones in like 3 minutes. He just threw that together. So as I said, yeah, I just thought it was a fun movie, good movie, but not as much substance that left me like really like leaving the theater having much to think about.
Yeah, see, that is controversial because I have it ranked very high.
Yeah, as most people do, I know.
The first Guardians of the Galaxy, for me, it took the superhero and comic genre and dropped it on its head. It's a true groundbreaker. I mean, don't laugh. When it comes to the idea that, yes, we can do these super serious and grounded comic book movies, but also still have as much fun as the cheesier entries of Days Past. To me, it was one of the best movie soundtracks ever made, and it's a perfect blend of great action and hilarious writing.
Yeah, this movie is a lot higher on my ranking if I was to do number scores, but just on entertainment wise, that's why it's a little lower. What's your next one?
So ahead of Civil War, I have Deadpool. For me, there's nothing that sticks out more when watching a comic book movie than when it is clear to the minds behind it that get it. And I mean, that's a compliment because this movie fires on so many cylinders and benefits from what is clearly the entire collective heart of the filmmakers poured into it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I enjoyed Deadpool 1 and 2, but don't have much to say on them at this moment.
And then ahead of Deadpool, I have Spider-Man No Way Home.
Okay, so I'm close on that.
To me, I thought it was an undeniably awesome movie. You set aside the critical elements and there's no denying this is essentially comic book fan service porn. And that's not to say that it doesn't work, because the cameos and appearances, A, make sense for the story, and B, don't stop anything dead. I mean, for me, it's a bit much at points, and that's probably why I don't have this movie rated as high as some, but this is a pretty damn good wrap to an excellent trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had a blast watching this in theaters. I think this was the closest that we got to Endgame feel since Endgame. It was a whole thing. Like, me and a few of my friends had watched it, and we were like sitting there when tickets went on sale, and we were trying to get our tickets as early as we could to get our good seats. Wanted to see it opening night. And then, yeah, obviously being a fan of the Raimi trilogy, and Tobey Maguire is my favorite Spider-Man, everybody kind of knew that they were going to show up, seeing as how all the villains were shown in the trailer. Yeah, it has the nostalgia factor for it. The only issue I ever had in this movie was literally like the plot was, I think, a little bit not thought through enough. I think that they kind of reverse engineered the plot and just thought, well, we're going to get all these people in the movie. Let's backtrack and figure out how we're going to like make sense of them being in the movie. And yeah, that's my only thing. I thought this movie was a lot of fun. Like, just the theater experience was great. I'm seeing it in the packed theater and everybody cheering when Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield came out those portals and everything. So definitely going to be something I remember for a long time. So for me, I had No Way Home. Okay, so since Guardians, I have Spider-Man Homecoming right above that. Also, another very great movie going experience for me. This was the first Spider-Man of the MCU, the first movie they did. So another packed theater. Everybody was very excited to see Tom Holland's iteration. And this movie to me was a very solid, don't want to call it origin, but introduction for his character into the MCU. They don't do the whole bitten by the spider, Uncle Ben's death, that whole shtick. This one is my only issue with his Spider-Man is that he's kind of helped out too much by Iron Man. I kind of want him to be more on his own, which I guess we'll be seeing now in this new trilogy or whatever they're doing with him now with Brand New Day. But yeah, I thought that the Vulture, Michael Keaton in this, his motivations are all very good for how he feels like let down by society and like all these big guys like Tony Stark taking his jobs from him. And then the continuity of using the Chitauri tech from the 2012 movie to make the Vulture's wing was a great way of utilizing what they had in play of the universe. And then the twist of him being the dad of his homecoming date was so fun, and everybody reacted to that in the theater. So I just thought this was like a very fun, inoffensive introduction to the MCU Spider-Man.
I'm glad you brought that up, because after No Way Home, I have Far From Home, which we already touched on. And then just ahead of that, I also have Homecoming.
Oh, so they're like right in a row.
Yeah,
for you.
From the trilogy.
It's 1, 2, and 3. Mm-hmm.
For me, I honestly believe this is the best live-action Spider-Man movie, thanks to the perfect capturing of the heart of the character, with as spot on of a Peter Parker as it gets. The John Hughes influence from director John Watts is the ideal stamp on a fun comic book story, and it's backed by a great twist and villain from Michael Keaton. Comparing, Spider-Man movies to others, like, I think it's very close to, it very slightly edges out Spider-Man 2.
Like the Raimi one, or
Yeah, Raimi, sorry.
That's controversial. Spider-Man 2, I disagree. I think Spider-Man 2 clears all of the home trilogy, in my opinion.
Hot take, but okay.
I don't know if that's a hot take.
Hot take for me, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. But I agree with you. I think that Homecoming was another one of those movies that I feel like people don't talk about nearly enough or give it its flowers. So at least we're in agreement there. Just for theater going experience, I had No Way Home above it, but Homecoming, again, I have that much higher rated in like a number system. As I said, I'll probably put that out on Letterboxd one day so we can see my actual rankings. Next up for me, we already touched on it. You already mentioned Age of Ultron all the way back, and I gave my 2 cents on that. And then I have Guardians 3, which we already talked about. And then introducing now for the first time, I have in my top, not in my top 5 yet, but close there, I have Iron Man, the first one. So yeah, this movie was obviously the thing that started off the whole MCU. They took like this big gamble at the time on RDJ, who was kind of having a renaissance in his career. Probably notably the most perfect casting for any hero in comic book movies ever is Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. He carries the film, and this movie, similar to the Hulk, had its recastings going forward. They're still trying to find their footing. The effects on this movie were great for its time. This came out 2008, around the same time as The Dark Knight. And yeah, this just laid the groundwork for everything that was to come in the MCU. It was just a fun origin to see how the regret and, everything Tony Stark was going through, creating all of these things for war and realizing exactly what he was doing and trying to, turn that around and do something good with it. Obadiah Stane, to me, the villain is where it's kind of like a little bit where MCU back then had its issues with their villains just being basically a copy of what the hero was. And so I didn't think he was a great villain. I know he's from the comics, the Ironmonger and everything, but that was the weaker point in the movie, was the antagonist to me. But all in all, like a great movie, great start to this great franchise that we've had for a long time.
Yeah, I have Iron Man in my top 5. I won't give away its placement yet, but
Yeah.
it's hard to really pinpoint what is more impressive about this movie. The lasting impact it has had on blockbuster cinema, or the fact that it stuck out in a year in which The Dark Knight was also released.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that post-credit scene alone, like now it just seems as though the MCU, people think that they just invented post-credits just because of how iconic that one of Nick Fury was after this first movie. So, all right, what do you have next up in your list?
So after, let's see, which was the one? So Homecoming, after, just above Homecoming, I have Black Panther.
And that's my next one too.
For me, with this film, quite often, even when the main character is good, it is the villain that can take a comic book movie to new heights. And that is certainly the case with Black Panther, an already good movie, which has an awesome soundtrack, by the way, that really ascends to greatness thanks to Michael B. Jordan's performance as Eric Killmonger.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it perfectly there. This movie, to me, unfortunately, why it's a little bit, I don't want to call it lower, it's quite high in my list, but lower than the others. I don't necessarily see Chadwick Boseman or T'Challa as being really the main focus. I kind of see him kind of reacting to things around him, and it was more kind of Killmonger running the show, which is not a bad thing because you get to see Michael B. Jordan for the first time that I seen him in a movie being the villain. And I think he does an excellent job. Yeah, the soundtrack's great. Ryan Coogler understood the source material, understood the characterization of not just the two main characters, but everybody surrounding them in Wakanda, made this whole beautiful civilization that we come to find more out about as MCU goes forward. And yeah, we just, it's all like tied together in this pretty good entry within the MCU as a nice introduction to Black Panther after we see him in Civil War. Yeah, I really did love this movie as well.
I feel like I can also jump ahead to what I have just above Black Panther, because you probably have it up there as well.
Mhm.
It is Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Huh. I thought Winter Soldier was your favorite. I thought that would be one.
So
I'm shocked
I've
from talking to you.
I've rewatched, and it is very similar to some of my all-time favorites. But when I'm looking at just the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, I kind of have to rank it accordingly. So it is number 7 on my list. For me, I mean, it's the espionage themed comic book movie that we deserved. I mean, nothing about the script or acting can be mocked here, but everyone involved turns in a top tier effort. And I mean, also fucking Robert Redford is in it. Like, what more do you want?
I wish they did a little bit more with him.
I agree.
But yeah, I mean, this movie to me is, how I can describe it, is everybody's big thing with Superman and Captain America. Oh, they're a Boy Scout, they're boring. This movie turned that on its head and put Captain America in arguably one of the most interesting movies in the MCU. Yeah, it takes him as obviously a soldier in the modern day and turns him almost into like this CIA thriller, situation where the government, like, he doesn't know who to trust. And it's not overstuffed with a bunch of MCU cameos. You got him and Black Widow, which makes sense seeing as how both of them work with S.H.I.E.L.D. You got, Nick Fury, who also works with S.H.I.E.L.D. So everybody's there for a good reason. And then it introduces who will now be the new Captain America, or who is the new Captain America, Sam Wilson as the Falcon. That's not tacked on or anything like that. I felt like that was not rushed through, and we don't need a whole Falcon movie to find out his backstory or anything like that. And then obviously returning Sebastian Stan as the Winter Soldier, Bucky. And we have, for the 3 movies that Captain America had within Steve Rogers had within the MCU, this progression of his his relationship with Bucky, and we see the complications for what happened with him being on Hydra and everything. So yeah, the whole espionage take on Captain America made his character, I think, so much more interesting to everybody. So yeah, definitely deserves its flowers. But I never would have thought that I'd have it higher than you on a list. For me, I'm in my top 5. So you want to get to your 5 now? I think we've talked about everything that you've already mentioned. Now I'm at 5.
Okay, so yeah, I have Winter Soldier at 7.
Mm-hmm.
6 is Thor Ragnarok.
Okay, we already touched on.
And number
Okay.
5 is The Avengers.
That's my number 5 too.
I think for me, in a world where Infinity War and Endgame exist, it might not seem as impressive that they were able to stick the landing with this movie, but it really was quite the achievement for its time. Tying all of these characters together, completing one arc, and setting up the largest arc in cinematic history. I mean, it's a job well done, especially considering the movie is also fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head there. I think that this movie, just for the ballsiness that they had to say, hey, we're taking a chance with some of these characters that aren't so well known. Everybody was saying, oh, well, you can't have Avengers without Spider-Man, all these things like that. And they said, well, we're going to take a gamble on it. We have this story. We're building up something movie by movie. And at this point, we were 5 movies in. This was the 6th movie into this franchise, about 4 years into what they did with Iron Man. And yeah, they pulled it off. Within this movie, I never felt like any one character necessarily didn't have their chance to shine. The people like Hawkeye and Black Widow didn't have like a ton to do because obviously they're humans in this grandiose thing. But even they still played their parts beautifully well. They didn't have a ton to do, but it was not like you didn't feel like you missed them or anything. So I feel like, yeah, this movie had the bickering and stuff like that, as most of these team up movies do in the beginning. But all in all, it comes together for this family that they kind of end up having. That's basically the cornerstone of this whole universe that ends up being this thing that people look up to, and a group that heroes in the modern time in the MCU want to become a part of. So yeah, definitely an achievement for sure. So yeah, that was my 5 as well. For me, 4 was Winter Soldier, which we already touched on, so not too far away. For 3, I had Civil War. I know that, it's a little controversial to have it so high. I assume that our 1 and 2s are the same. I think that they'll be swapped maybe. But I noticed that you haven't said your Iron Man yet, so maybe Iron Man is one of your 2. So if you want to
Iron Man is at 4.
Okay.
I know we talked about that. And then Guardians is at 3.
Gotcha. Okay, and then our 1 and 2s are the same.
Yeah, it's just a question.
Just gonna be switched,
probably.
I know. I've talked to you, and I know which one you like more. For me, I have Endgame at 2 and Infinity War for 1, and I believe you have it switched.
Yeah, I have it Infinity War 2 and Endgame 1.
Yeah. You can go ahead and touch on Infinity War then.
Okay.
Since it's 2 for you.
Yeah, I mean, Infinity War for me, it's a movie that shouldn't work, but it perfectly kicks off the beginning of the best possible bow to put on years of buildup in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's quite possibly the most depressing summer blockbuster ever released that can also be considered badass and awesome. And you could argue without much pushback that Thanos is one of the best movie villains of all time.
Correct. For me, Infinity War being at 1, the way that we just talked about the first Avengers movie being such an achievement, they really stepped up their game with this one, because they didn't just have the Avengers. They had Doctor Strange, they had the Guardians. Who else did they have? They had Spider-Man in there. They juggled all of these characters, and once again, it was done so well, to the point where our villain is actually basically the main character in the movie, has the most screen time. His relationship with his daughter Gamora is at the forefront, and their whole thing and what he's trying to do. He's like this villain that we don't agree with, but they do a good job of changing from the comics that he's just in love with death, and they turn him into this tragic character that had to watch his planet basically die because he didn't feel like they didn't listen to him. So now he takes it upon himself to correct the universe. And with the Joker, it has probably some of the best quotes in a movie, like Thanos. Like, to this day, I quote that movie all the time. People are going to always remember the things. I think every line out of his mouth in the movie is like a bar.
It
like
is.
The writing is just great. For me, this movie, one of the best movie-going experiences I've ever had in my life for any franchise. The sheer shock on people's faces, including my own, when the movie had everybody starting to dust when he did it. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, Oh, well, I was like looking at my watch. I was like, well, I don't know what are the Avengers going to do. There's not a lot of time in this movie for them to fix it. And then, boop, cut to credits, directed by Joe and Anthony Russo. And I'm like,
Huh.
well, I'll be damned. Like they let the villain actually win, and the movie's done. And then at that time, we knew that there was going to be a part two and everything, but we didn't. We were everybody at that point. It was the height of MCU. Everybody's theorizing what's going to happen and so on. So it was so much fun. I felt like it was a time when everybody was all together. We all loved the MCU and everybody was talking about it and everybody was into it. I'll touch on Endgame a little bit and then you can give your thoughts since you have it at one. Why I have it below Infinity Wars, because not that it didn't handle everything the same as Infinity War did, it had less to do because it kind of goes back to its roots of the original Avengers teaming up again now to bring everybody back. Where I draw from it, or I draw back from it, where it like ranks down at 2 for me. It kind of ruined Thanos for me. I didn't love how they turned him into this villain that's now like, oh, I'm just gonna kill everyone. And then time travel has always been a cop out for me in movies. I hate that. Just any movie that uses time travel to fix something. But other than that, I feel like the movie itself is fan service the movie, and not in a bad way. You get all these callbacks when they go back in time to all these MCU movies that everybody obviously remembers and enjoys. And yeah, just as a fan, it's just like Infinity War, up there with some of the best times I've had in the theater. My theater went absolutely ballistic when Captain America lifted Thor's hammer. Just Iron Man dying, everybody in my theater was like sobbing. It was the movie that I think ended the whole saga that they started in 2008. Put a bow on it so well. As I said, my only two gripes were the whole villain and then the time travel thing. I wish they had found a different way to fix things.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this much for me. It's the perfect ending to a saga that pulled me in from the start. And for me, both Infinity War and Endgame are essentially tied in terms of quality, but I give the slight tiebreak to the finale. There is something about the stakes and emotion that just does it for me. They find a way to take characters who you are from beyond familiar with, have them play against who we know them to be, and it never misses a beat. To take a franchise that follows rather familiar beats and instead shuffle you down an unexpected path is the perfect whatever it takes ending.
Yeah, to this day, they have not made a movie to convince me that the MCU needed to continue. I think it was such a good ending to the Infinity Saga that they should have just ended the MCU there. And then Marvel Studios could have just started doing their own thing with whatever they wanted to do. But I don't think they should have continued the universe. And I still to this day hold that opinion. I think that Endgame should have been it. And then they continue on with whatever they want to do. But yeah, that's our ranking on the whole MCU as a whole, and our little tiny mini reviews for each movie as we discussed it. You have any closing thoughts or anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, just hopefully you all enjoyed our takeaways on each film and the universe as a whole. And yeah, feel free to debate us if you have any differing opinions. I'm sure there will be some.
Yeah. We're going to try and do some more of these ranking type videos. So not only send to us what your thoughts and what your rankings are for these MCU films, which ones you thought were the best and which one you thought was the worst. But yeah, also feel free to send us suggestions for what you want us to rank next. We're going to start trying to do some more of these fun videos, some weeks when there's not like a really big movie to review necessarily. So yeah, we're open to feedback and open to suggestions. So yeah, we're willing to hear whatever you guys have to say. But yeah, that's basically our ranking, and that's basically our episode this week.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yep. Have a good one. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.